Hey, hello Earthlings, how you doing? Welcome to Dublin, welcome back to Dublin. It's a sunny day, so something to celebrate. And well, I haven't done one of these for a long time. Yet again, I'm here waiting for the Vegan Information Project Inc. And so I thought I'd do one of these YouTubey things. So this is Roger Yates and Neville, the Vegan Information Project van. Once again going in for his test soon, so wish him luck. Neville has a personality. Yes, he does. So there's that. Now, I haven't done one of these for a long time, so I suppose I better introduce myself again. I've been a vegan since, because a YouTuber, very unkindly I thought, called me a nobody a couple of weeks ago. So I better introduce myself as a nobody, a well-known has-been. So my name is Roger Yates. I've been a vegan since 1979. I've been involved in all kinds of campaigning ever since. I was part of a number of action groups in the 1980s, all single issue type things, involved with the Hunt Saboteurs, involved with the Sea Shepherd, did a Orkney campaign, Save the Seals, all that kind of stuff, grouse shooting, Waterloo Cup, stay hare coursing, all kinds of single issue stuff, vivisection, fur campaigns, all kinds of stuff. And then I went into academia, and my MA was about the British animal advocacy movement, and just looking at that, it's called the Sociology of Compromise, and that's online. I'll put a link down below for that. And then my PhD work was about the support pillars of cultural speciesism, which are theology, philosophy, and everyday social practice. So I'll put a link to that down below as well. Now, I'm currently writing a 10-part blog series for VegFest UK ahead of their London conference coming up. And you can find that all over social media. So look for VegFest, VegFest Express, VegFest London, and Tim Barford, his own personal page. Or it'll come up all over there. I think there's kind of 2 out at the moment. There's a 3rd one ready, and we're doing a series of 10. So I really wanted to revisit some of the themes for that. Basically, I'm a long-term vegan, as I just said, and so it's irritating to me a little bit that you've got a lot of people who are relatively new to the movement, who are redefining what veganism means, and even to some extent what animal rights means. And this is quite frustrating for me. It is something that I've talked about before in a previous video when I was all baldy. So I thought I'd kind of do it again, and because I had an Instagram conversation with the co-founder of an international group. It was AV, and they were saying that veganism is and always has been just about the animals, meaning the other animals they meant. And of course this is not true. And so I was trying to explain to them that the people who started the vegan social movement, our movement, had a much broader vision of veganism than that. And so I use the concept of focus and scope to explain this. The scope of the vegan movement has always been about our relations with other animals. That's always been the main focus of the movement, but the scope is much wider. In fact, the founders of our movement, and it was founded in the late years of the Second World War, they'd seen what had happened. In fact, Donald Watson, one of the co-founders, said that he saw that the war had shattered people, that it was real kind of shock to their system. And this was the second one, global conflict in short order. And so they'd really tried to work out what was going on with humanity, and they thought that we'd reached an all-time low in a way, had gone back into some kind of barbarous state, some kind of form of savagery. And they thought, we're going to need a radical idea based on peace and non-violence and justice to get us out of this. And that's what they saw veganism as. They saw veganism as part of the peace movement. They thought of it as a justice movement. They thought about it in terms of non-violence. And they also thought about it in this particular way. They said that veganism was part and parcel of the moral evolution of humanity. So they saw veganism as rising us back up to be decent people, essentially, non-violent, peaceful people, their vision of a vegan world was amazing. It's quite beautiful in a way, a kind of a non-violent humanity, which didn't exploit other animals, of course, and also would not be exploiting each other as well. And so I try to point out this to the relatively new vegans, and they're just rejecting it out of hand. And in fact, this one person that I was talking to was so kind of ignorant of the meaning of veganism that they were using the 1979 Vegan Society definition of veganism and saying it was the 1944 definition, and the 1944 definition doesn't exist. In fact, I had to point out to them that the Vegan Society historians themselves, Samantha Calvert, for example, pointed out that it was several years before Leslie Cross points out that there isn't a great definition of veganism, and they needed to kind of sort it out. Donald Watson himself was so busy doing other things, like virtually doing everything, being the secretary, treasurer, the main writer, etc., etc. He was so busy doing all that kind of thing, and also getting involved with some health scares, because they had to prove that veganism was, the plant-based diet was a viable one. So there was a lot going on in those early years, and Watson was almost kind of left to it for a number of months. And then in the run up to the end of the 40s, then Leslie Cross started to point out to the fact that, well, we haven't got a really great working definition of veganism here, and so we need to work on that. And so they came up with the idea of the definition, which was really based on this idea of focus and scope. And so the focus was on a short kind of hand version of the definition, which was that other animals should not be exploited by humans, or man, as they said in those days. But they also talked about the broad vegan aims, or the broad kind of program. And the first part of it was this focus, that we would alter the way that we see other animals. We wouldn't use them. We wouldn't use them for food, vivisection, hunting, etc., etc., etc. But then the second broad aspect of the vegan aim, as they put it, was the benefit that it would bring to humanity. And they essentially thought that if we liberated other animals and we changed our mindset, that we would also emancipate ourselves as well. And so there's always been a benefit to humans from the grand scheme, the utopian vision, whatever you want to call it, of veganism. So if you do hear these fairly common claims now that veganism has got nothing to do with human beings, this is not correct. It never has been correct. It's something that we seem to have a generation now who want it to be, but it never was. And so they're trying to rewrite history. In the same way as, again, in this conversation, I was talking about the fact that Tom Reagan, who is the originator of abolitionist animal rights, he wrote The Case for Animal Rights in 1983. Now, he talked about how animal rights was a part of and not opposed to the human rights movement. And I was told that that was just bullshit, although it's there in The Case for Animal Rights, the actual groundbreaking foundational work of rights-based animal rights, And so, again, we seem to have this kind of deliberate... There's a generation now who are deliberately ignorant about the foundation of their own movement, whether we want to call it animal rights, whether we call it vegan animal rights, or call it the vegan movement. They seem ignorant of the values of the people who started these movements, or this movement. Now, to me, that's rather unacceptable. I'm kind of used to the idea that you join a movement and you find out about the movement you've joined, rather than joining a movement and then redefining what it is and just say, well, sod you, this is what this movement means to me and that's it, kind of thing. And because they're influential people now in the 21st century, they're passing on their ignorance to a whole generation of activists who don't seem to know that the movement they've joined is far more radical than they think. The vegan movement is a very revolutionary idea. It was to transform, it was transformative of human beings through the liberation of other animals. So Cross says, we're not about welfare, we're about liberation, and we're also talking about rights of other animals. And in those terms they talked about granting rights, because again they were writing in the 1940s and 1950s, and that was well before Tom Reagan was writing. And Tom Reagan is a moral rights theorist, and so he's suggesting that other animals are rights bearers, and that what we do to them are rights violations by using them. That wasn't part of their consciousness, so fair enough. The point is, all of that now is part of the vegan animal rights scene. So now we've got influential people in the movement who are deliberately cherry-picking what vegan animal rights means. I find unacceptable, as I said, and also I'm not quite sure why. Why are they trying to make smaller a big idea? Why are they trying to slim down a revolutionary idea? To me, it doesn't make sense. If anybody knows, please tell me. I mean, someone said recently that it's probably because a lot of these people are kind of right-leaning politically, and so therefore, you know, the idea of you know, some elements of human rights doesn't necessarily mesh with their worldview. Well, if that's the case, then they have to acknowledge that they're out of step with the founders of our movement, be it the vegan movement or be it the animal rights movement. They're out of step with that, and at the very least they should acknowledge that they're out of step with it. That's the only fair thing to do. I've always been a great believer in fairness. It's not fair to join a movement and then just try to wreck it from within. That's literally not fair, but that's what's going on at the moment in the vegan movement. And I think that you know, some of us who have got a history in the movement and they've been around for a while, we need to stand up to this. We need to fight for the original values, because, as I said, the original values are really good. They're revolutionary. They're what's needed, and they're probably the only ones who can save the planet at the moment as well. So it's actually crucial that we stand up for veganism against the new vegans, if you will. Okay, rant over. I'll see you again sometime. Bye for now.